Nail. Live chat. Time to get. All right. I don't know that we can technically call this saucy as much as dressing tonight. So we're looking at the recipes for tonight are going to be a pesto, a sesame ginger, Italian dressing, and a pico de gallo. So the trick I'm going to be pulling off here tonight, hopefully, with the pesto is usually when you do a pesto, that's my time, you use fresh herbs for it. But I have a fair amount of everything I need in a dried herb format. So I am going to see what I can achieve with that. And part of that is going to be seeing if I can get them to partially rehydrate before I get going. So we're going to do so for the pesto, we're going to use half a cup of dried basil and 2 tablespoons of parsley. So these are parsley flakes, and this is my dried basil. So half a cup of dried basil. That's a third of a cup. Fine, be that way. I guess we're going with 3/4 of a cup if we can make it work. Yeah, you're just going to be a dork. This lid doesn't let any of it out. It's not particularly useful. I might have to cut this in half. It's a lot of herbs and spices. I might be able to make it work. Considering how little basil I use on a regular basis anyway, I'll just do it. So that's half a cup of dried basil. What are we doing? It looks like it's carrying the signal all right. And then we're looking for 2 tablespoons of parsley. What I'm going to do is, that's 1. That's 2. So that's the basil and the parsley. I'm going to put about a tablespoon of water in there to let them rehydrate a little bit. I might actually have to do more than that. I want this to sort of become a paste, because they're not, you don't want them sopping wet. You don't want a broth or a tea, but you don't want them dry either. I might just have to do a lot more than that. I'm going to have to do way more than that. All right. Mainly just trying to rehydrate them so that they actually can be something more than, I mean, the way they are right now, they would thicken up anything you put them into because they soak up any moisture. And they wouldn't necessarily blend particularly well. You'd have to increase the amount of liquid you put into the recipe. So I mean, geez. So we're looking at roughly nearly a third of a cup of water into this to start to get it kind of combine and rehydrate a little bit. Speaking of hydration, I should probably go over there and check on my noodles. Guess I'm going to serve some pesto over noodles for myself here. So let's see if we can get this to soak up some of that water. Come on. Soak it. Smells fragrant. Okay, so that should be more than enough water. Let that just soak for a little bit. Okay, so about a third a cup of water to do that. All right, so mix this up over here. And that's just the noodles for the pesto. So where are we at? We've got the parsley and the basil. Pinch of salt. And now we're going to do half a cup of Parmesan, a tablespoon or a teaspoon of minced garlic. That would have been a big mix up. And then olive oil. And for olive oil, we're looking for about half a cup. So again, I'm going to be using my quarter cup. So we're looking for the garlic. Minced garlic I have already, so I don't have to mince it on the channel here. So we're looking for no, it's 1 teaspoon. So. That's 1 teaspoon of garlic, minced. And then where we go from there is Parmesan, which I got here. And we're looking for half cup. And if you do what you did last night, I'm going to be annoyed. Why would you tear off just the tab that you're supposed to? There isn't a tab to open this one. All right, fine. We can do this that way too. No, we can't. It doesn't want to pierce it. Okay. I'm not going to argue about it. All right, so we want half a cup of this. 1, 2. We got plenty of Parmesan. I went out and got some more too since yesterday. And then, and then it's just the olive oil, half a cup. So, new thing of olive oil. All right, and that's super not useful. Let it go. Let it go. So we're looking for half a cup of this. That's the slowest pouring olive oil. That may be a positive sign here. We're going to have a nice quality olive oil, are we? So, come on, you can fill a quarter of a cup faster than that, dude. Okay, that's one. And about 2 cups of olive oil, or half a cup of olive oil. 2 quarter cups of olive oil. Yeah, that's where we're at, roughly. Okay, so that's, I'm going to set that down on a paper towel so that I don't have such a mess. All right, so mix those, the garlic, the Parmesan, and the olive oil together. Making a nice combination of that. And then we just mix in our herb seasonings that we did. And this is I guess technically I would call this an improvised pesto because it is not fresh herbs and it's not quite the same thing as a traditional pesto. Now, in a pesto, you usually would have something like a bit of toasted pine nut, ground toasted pine nut. But I'm going to take a little bit of almond flour for a little bit of that nutty flavor profile. You can use walnut too sometimes. I'll just do a pinch of this. Just to give it a little bit of nuttiness, a little bit of tooth, a little bit of some of the nut oil flavor to it. And I would say I usually like a slightly thinner pesto. We'll try it over pasta and see how that goes from the finish there. Might add a little more olive oil. And that did not do much for keeping ingredients off my counter. So here is our pesto. It is a pretty thick pesto. And that should be good for that. I will actually take this, add some noodles to it, use that. May want to incorporate a little more olive oil to get that. Well, that might work. So let's give that a taste. Nice. Mm. Mm-hmm. I think what I want to do for that is a little bit of garlic powder, maybe a little bit of onion powder. And a dash more salt. That's way more salt than I wanted to do. All right, so let's give that a, don't argue, please. There we go. Let's give that a go. See how that goes. Now that's a pesto. Mm-mm-mm. Now, for the most part, people aren't going to notice the difference between the dried and the fresh herbs. But there is a slight difference in flavor. All right, so I'll rinse this out, and we can get started on the pico de gallo. Stop burning, please. Thank you. Yeah. We've had so many sauces that we've made this week that I ran out of containers. I had to really start stocking up again. So that's the pesto. We'll set that over side here. Next on our list is the pico de gallo, which should be pretty straightforward. It's pretty much just tomatoes, jalapeno, some lime juice. So, where's my, I just got this today. Some cilantro, because I don't use it very often. And some salt. And a quarter onion that I have left over from the other day. Where's my onion? Onion. There we go. So pico de gallo is pretty straightforward. So cutting board. I should probably rinse these tomatoes off. I'm going to use the two bigger ones because I don't think I need 3. We'll see how it looks as we go, but 2 should be enough for the pico de gallo. I'm going to say that how many times during tonight? Pico de gallo, pico de gallo, pico de gallo. Give it a slightly hot water wash. So we're going to do cut our tomato. Not the sharpest knife I've got, I don't think. So let's get this pot ready. We're making pico de gallo. Pico de gallo. Pico de gallo. It's a fun word to say. Well, I guess it's not technically a word. It's a fun phrase to say. Okay, you're just, my cutting board's too small for what I'm doing with it. Overcrowding it. Overcrowded cutting board. Pico de gallo on a crowded cutting board. Pico de gallo on a crowded cutting board. Yeah, I could probably stand to sharpen this knife. Pico de gallo. So we're going to do 2 tomatoes. We're part of the way through that. We're not quite halfway there. And I'm doing a smaller dice. You can do a big chunkier pieces in your cooking. I don't know that we can call this cooking because it is not cooked. That's half the fun of each of these tonight is they're not a cooked thing. They're not heated. They're pretty straightforward. They're You get your ingredients and you mix them. All right, you're just going to be a jerk about it. I'm not going to play with you all night here. This tomato skin is pretty thick, so I'm wondering if this tomato might be a little underripe, which is all right for pico de gallo. So a little underripe. Get a little tartness in your tomato. So we've got our pesto pretty much where we need it. I like mine a little more garlicky, so I threw in a little more garlic and some onion. And then it needed a pinch more salt for my tastes. I like my pesto to be a little salty. My knife really isn't as sharp as it ought to be for cutting through tomato skins. It's struggling. That's not a good sign. Should probably work on that, huh? Nah. Why would I do that? Okay, so that's that. And then take this tomato. Yeah, the end caps, the heel of it, each tomato that I do seems to be the hard part to get the knife to go through on an angle. That's fine. Don't slide around so much. Slippery tomatoes, slippery tomatoes. Slippery tomatoes, where are you trying to go? So, nice, firm tomatoes. Tomato. I'm sure you can get canned diced tomatoes, but that is not what you use in this. They're too, the canning process heats them and crumbles them, breaks them down a little bit. The thing about pico de gallo is you want something that's fresh and uncooked for your tomato. And I don't know anywhere you can acquire diced, fresh, uncooked tomato unless you have a grocery store that maybe makes canned, like containers of, I mean, they might run it through a food processor. I don't know. That sounds like a horrible idea. So I guess we'll call it there. That is our 2 tomatoes. 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 That's going to leave all sorts of kind of mess all over the... All right, so, and then onion for the pico de gallo. Pico de gallo. I got to admit, I kind of love that word. Just a little bit. You might have been able to tell. So what we're going to do is... I've got myself a red onion. I think it's a Vidalia. And I'm going to dice that up. So that's a rather large chunk. But break that into some pieces. That's a big piece. We don't want the big pieces in there right now. We want little tiny juicy pieces of onion in our pico de gallo. And some of these end caps don't break up right. There's probably a way to cut them so that they don't do that, but I am only quasi-skilled in the kitchen. Quasi. Modus operandi. Okay. So, onion, tomato. Well, honestly, just one onion. At this point, it's actually half an onion. Because it's what I had left over from when I was doing the marinara sauce, I believe. And that seemed like a wise use of that. Because otherwise, we're going to have a onion sitting in the fridge that I'm not going to use in time before it goes weird. What is it in Shrek where they say it gets soft and stinky and sprouts little white hairs? Ooh, that pesto's got a little after flavor there. I think that's my need for extra garlic and onion in it. Okay, so Pico de gallo. I thought about making a joke about how my fascination with the name Pico de Gallo is gallows humor because it's spelled Gallo. But I don't know if that was a funny joke or not. Pico de gallows humor. All right, so that is the onion and tomato combined. And then I'm going to throw in some jalapeno. And now the trick to doing jalapeno is cut around the top, pull that off, cut down the side, crack that open, pull out all the pith and the seeds, and that goes in here. And then you rub your eyes with your hands after you've put them on the... No, don't do that. Do not do that. I have learned that working in a kitchen years ago. Now you can actually pull the pith and the seeds out with a spoon. I remember working in a kitchen for a long while, and you just got into a rhythm of just jamming your thumb down through the soft spot near the stem, tearing it in half, and then ripping the guts out with your fingers. And it was just like you got into the rhythm of doing it. I mean, I'd do 20 pounds of peppers in an afternoon. So that's where I never ended up doing the fancy schmancy ways of doing stuff. Just do it. That's a pretty sharp little pepper. Ooh, you can smell the freshness of that pepper. It's one of the pleasures of working with fresh ingredients like this, is not doing this canned garbage that you get in the stores. Well, I mean, I'm not going to be picky. If that's what you need to do to cost and convenience-wise, go for it. But there is just something about a fresh-smelling, just-cut set of ingredients for a recipe like this that make all the difference. Did we lose somebody? We found somebody? I don't know. But that's sort of where we are at right now. So we've got the onions, tomatoes, jalapenos. We're going to do some lime, salt, and cilantro to taste. A lot of people don't like cilantro. That's the one that has the slightly soapy taste for some people, depending on their genetics. I did some gene testing to find out that certain people have a predisposition to tasting soap when they taste cilantro. Okay, so we got that. We're going to put a little bit of lime juice in there. So that's lime juice. Some salt, and of course now with my freshly washed hands I won't be able to get the edge on these tearaway tops. There we go. So then we've got that, and that is our pico de gallo. Ooh, that smells good. I can pull out some chips later and have a go at that. So pico de gallo. Okay, and now we have two dressings we want to work on. One is an Italian dressing, which is just, have a container to make this in? That's the real question, isn't it? I thought I had this worked out here. Okay, so vinegar, olive oil, a little bit of the Dijon mustard. So we're going to have a clove, 2 cloves of garlic. That is not the one we're using for that. All right. I think that's right. Oh, give it a second. All right, so what we were going to do with this was, Italian dressing is 3 tablespoons of vinegar, white wine vinegar in this case. So that's 1 tablespoon. probably do this in a bowl first, huh? It'd probably make more sense. Do I have any more of my bowls? I got one more of those bowls. I'm running out of bowls. I'm running out of containers for the finished products too. 2. And then three, and then a little bit more. I like a little bit more in there. So we've got that. And then we're going to be mixing in our olive oil. It's a 1/4 cup of olive oil. Okay, so that's that. So we've got the olive oil and we've got the vinegar. And that's really the biggest base of what an Italian dressing is. So we're going to do 2 cloves of garlic. Now, that's a 1/4. Where's my half? There we go. So camera's flipping out. 2. I think that's about 2 cloves of garlic minced. Maybe a little bit more. And then we're going to do, you can do a little touch of Dijon mustard, which I will actually have over there when I blend it tonight. And then some onion powder, thyme, basil, oregano, salt, and pepper. So each one of those is going to be 1/2 teaspoon. So we've got our 1/2 teaspoon here. So 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Seems like a lot of salt for that. So we've got, so we want onion powder, thyme, basil, oregano. So onion powder. Oregano. Thyme. Oh, we have the basil again. Our basil? Yeah, basil. So we have onion powder, thyme, basil, oregano, salt, and pepper. So if you want to put pepper in, I don't put pepper in my Italian dressing. Now, if you had like a red pepper or like pimento, maybe that would be a viable option. But I don't put black pepper in my Italian dressing. Basil, oregano, yeah, thyme, and this one's a new one, so I'm going to have to pop this one open. And looks like pine needles. So thyme. Let it go. Who designed that threading? Maybe want to look at getting another job, guys. All right, and then some onion powder. And then it's really just mixing that up and calling it good. So we now have ourselves pretty much a straightforward Italian dressing. So mix that up a little bit. I have a funnel. Get it in that bottle better. It's a very hearty Italian dressing. And you can throw in, with something like this, you can throw in a little bit of Parmesan cheese to give it a little creaminess to it. I wouldn't add a cream or anything to it myself, but I'm sure you could tweak it in that direction if you really wanted to. I will pour that in later when I'm pretty sure I'm not going to make a bigger mess than I would like to. Rinse these off. That's that. That's that. All right, so put those down to just drain a little bit. So we've got the Italian dressing done. So the last dressing that we want to be making is the sesame ginger dressing. So this is going to be sort of a custom figured out recipe, sort of like my last night where I did the smoked Gouda and bacon cheese sauce. This is going to be improvised a little bit too. By the way, if you're anything like me after last night's Gouda and bacon, I'm less into very creamy, milky flavored cheese sauces, and I favor a sort of a saltier, more flavorful cheese. That's a horrible hand gesture for that. So I added more salt, a little more bacon, and a touch of garlic and onion to it to give it a little more post flavor for me. But that's just flavoring it to your liking or not. So now for our sesame ginger dressing. Close that up. We're going to use this one. This one I'm going to go pretty straightforward with, very simple from the ground up. This is going to be sesame oil, olive oil, soy sauce, rice vinegar or apple cider vinegar. I'm going to use apple cider because that's what I have. Honey and some diced ginger. And for the most part, every single one of these things is going to be 2 tablespoons worth. And so that should get us a fair amount of this at the end of it, but it also makes it a super simple. I may cut back on the honey, and the ginger is going to be 1 tablespoon instead of 2. But the honey, I mean, I don't want this as like a super sickly sweet dressing, so I may cut back on that a little bit. But overall, this is going to be a 2 tablespoon recipe. So soy sauce, sesame oil, olive oil. Pull off of these herbs and spices. So we got 1, 2, 3. I'm going to use the cider vinegar. There is 2 cloves of garlic. And then honey and ginger, which I've got a pickled ginger actually. I use this a lot in my seafood. This is a cheap pickled ginger that I got at the grocery store. I mean, the recipe calls for ginger, vinegar, and some sugar, or in this case, honey. And this is essentially ginger, water, a little acetic acid, which is vinegar, citric acid, which is a replacement for acetic acid. It has a little aspartame in it, so a little sweetener, potassium sorbate, and some coloring. So the aspartame is used in place of sugar. If you don't want to do that, you can use some fresh ginger and shave off you're going to want about a tablespoon of ginger. I'm going to use a little bit more on that because it's not a fresh ginger. So I might just pour it into this bottle here. So let's just do 2 tablespoons of sesame oil. Toasted sesame oil, I should say, too. It has a nuttier flavor profile. That's 1. I might do it just a little bit more. It's just my little bit of, I don't always go all the way up to the top of the spoon so that it doesn't spill everywhere and make a mess. But that leaves me a little less than a tablespoon, and that's me being antsy and saying, like, no, it really should be a whole tablespoon. So, got sesame oil. I should do the olive oil next. Let's use this one. See if we can use this one up. One. 2. And a bit more. All right, so that's the oil. And then next in this process is soy sauce. Soy sauce. Now I might do at some point a recipe for how to make soy sauce too. When I'm working on this cookbook, I may end up doing a few of these fermented sauces. But it's one of those things, it's definitely not cooking show material because it's a little more complicated than you want to try to do on a cooking show. And the thing I was thinking about earlier today was Well, I've had a blast doing this. The 4 recipes per episode may be a bit aggressive for future reference. I may do 2 or 3 per episode. So we've done the sesame oil, the olive oil, the soy sauce, now the vinegar. I might do white wine vinegar and cider vinegar and split the difference. But the recipe really should use a rice wine vinegar because its flavor profile is a little more of what you're looking for. A cider vinegar is a sweeter vinegar, and I think that will work for some of it. And the wine is a little bit of a lighter vinegar flavor. So that, I think, will probably pull off an achievable equivalent of a rice vinegar without me buying a whole nother container of one more type of vinegar. I don't do a lot of vinegar use in my house here. So having 4 containers of vinegar doesn't make a lot of sense for me. So there's that. So that's the vinegar. Did we do the cloves of garlic in there? I believe we did that already, right? No, we didn't, did we? That was in the Italian seasoning, right? So now we're going to do the honey. So we're going to do a tablespoon of honey and then add a little more as we go. Okay, why is the camera freaking out? So we're going to do 1 tablespoon of honey and little tidbit of information here. You'll notice in a second here that the honey slides off that spoon and doesn't leave a lot of clinging honey. And that's because I used this spoon first for oil. So the honey's not going to stick to the spoon as aggressively. So 1.5 tablespoons. We'll start with that and see how it tastes. And you keep a distance from the bottle so that as it converges into that stream, it fits into the neck of the bottle so that I don't have to worry about it too much. I hear a sound. I don't have anything cooking. Should be all right. Okay, so we've done the honey. Now the tricky part is going to be doing the ginger. And I'm going to pull out, we're looking for about 1 tablespoon of diced ginger. You might want to run this through like a blender once you've mixed it all together. I think that's probably more than 1 tablespoon by a little bit, but that's what I'm going with. Actually, I might pull a little bit out of that. That really seems like an aggressive stack of ginger. Don't want to do too much here. Ginger's not an overly subtle taste. I'm going to dice this up. Now you might be able to get away with like a dried ginger. I feel like that's sort of cheating in this particular case. but then I'm also using a pickled ginger. So I am already cheating. See what cheats we think are okay and which ones we don't. So we'll use that. Should have put down a wet paper towel so that the cutting board didn't move around so much. All right, so that's pretty good. That's a pretty fine dice. And we put that in the bottle. Usually you would do this in a bowl. I'm just being a stubborn dork tonight. So that's going to be pretty much, let's see, olive oil. So we did the sesame, olive oil, soy, vinegar. I think I need to put the garlic in. And then a little bit of garlic. So I think we do, let's see, garlic is 2 cloves of garlic. So in my lexicon, that is essentially about 1.5 teaspoons. So that'll be our sesame ginger dressing. And our Italian dressing is pretty much done. I think the biggest difference with those is I could, with the Italian dressing, I can add the Dijon mustard. And with this, both of them, I can run them through a blender to make them a little bit smoother. Did want to wash that off again, just to make sure it's nice and clean. So I want to make sure that honey dissolves in this mixture. So you can see at the bottom of that container, it poured all the way through the liquids. I might not run that through a blender, honestly. I like a little texture to my dressings. And that was a pretty finely chopped, pretty finely diced ginger. I can always run it through a blender later if I want to. But you can kind of see the coloration. I could pull the label off. That would probably be nice. There we go. So there is my sesame ginger dressing. And you can use it as a marinade or sauce for fish or stuff like that. Pour it over a stir fry. But I mean, I'm calling it a dressing because that's really its original intent. It's a variation on a vinaigrette. So those are the main recipes. Let's see if I can bottle up that Italian too, huh? All right, so I got myself some tortilla chips for my pico de gallo, and we're going to have some of that. That's my cheat sheet right there. So we're going to do a little pico de gallo snacking. And a little pesto pasta later. I did a taste test earlier tonight. You could put like a cheese sauce on the pico de gallo, or add some beans to it. Ooh, a little sour cream. Like some sour cream in the fridge. A little more lime. A touch more cilantro. Where's my cilantro? And I feel like it needs a little bit of a spice. The single jalapeno that I used, I don't know if it's carrying the weight of what it needs to. But maybe that's just me being picky. That's pretty good. There you go. It's very tasty. All right, we're at 1 hour and 10. I'm going to call it for tonight, and I thank you for joining me, and I will see you tomorrow for, I guess, a summary of the week and what we've done. Talk to you then. Bye.